Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcus Aurelius, and this is Dominions 4 Thrones of Ascension mod showcase. The mod I would like to showcase this time is Aurum, the Golden Tower by Executor. I also want to show off the map Neohaven by Shimwooley. I will have a link to both the map and the mod in my description. Let's start with the map. As you can see here, this is kind of an old school looking parchment style map, and it's got a lot of character to it. There's different terrain types drawn on, there's different cities, and they have names. Like, for example, right across the middle you see the Devil's Wasteland, and right up north of it you see Caratine City. There's the North Kingdom. It's just a really beautiful map. I wouldn't necessarily play on it for my LPs because it's very large and it's a lot of provinces, and so for the type of game I play it's too big, which is why I'm showcasing it here. My only criticism of this map, if you could even call it a criticism, is that when you look at it, the first thing you see, what jumps out at your eyes, is the province borders, right? And I feel like it kind of drowns out all the beautiful stuff behind them, the trees and the mountains and the rivers and the cities and the words. And so if I would make any change at all to this, I would just make the province borders lighter or dotted lines, just recede them to the background so that the really cool stuff takes more precedence. And so when you look at this, you immediately see the names of the lands and the cities and the icons and the mountains and trees, and you don't necessarily see all these dark brown lines. But I mean, that again, that's not really much of a criticism. I think it's a beautiful map, and I'm having a little bit of fun playing on it. But now let's talk about the nation. Aurum, the Golden Tower, is a nation for the Middle Ages, and I've done quite a bit. I've found that I really love this pretender. This is not a pretender for the mod, but it's a pretender that works well for this segment because it's a expert researcher, and also it makes everyone around it an expert researcher as well. And so for me trying to get up to research really quick in order to get these cool national summons, it's very helpful. But let's talk a little bit about this nation. Unlike my previous mod showcase, I am not going to read the flavor text. I'll open up the window, you can pause the video and read it yourself if you like, but I'll talk to you a little bit about what I think about the unit and how I've used it. So starting with the commanders, we have the Tower Cultist. This is just your basic scout unit, but what makes this unique is that it is also an assassin, and it is a level 1 priest and a sacred unit. So it's kind of like your go-to priest slash scout, really. And if you want to later on in the game use it as an assassin, you can. So it's a very versatile unit, and it has a lot of uses. You can build temples with it, you can check out your enemies with it, and finally you can kill leaders with it. Then there is the Aurumian Legat, and this is a mounted commander that has 40 leadership, so basic leadership. It has a patrol bonus, and it has trample. So I could see it as being a field commander that leads cavalry or other chariots, and definitely it's useful for blood hunting, not that this nation's really set up for that, but for patrolling, it's good for that. If there's a province where you think you have a lot of high-level mages and are worried about assassins, you might want to stick a couple of these guys in there. Then there's the Aurumian High Lord. He has a higher leadership than the Legate at 80, and he is sacred, but other than that, he's pretty basic. Now, I think this is a mistake. I think standard only affects troops in Dominions 4 and not commanders. I tested it out by creating a guy down here, Golbrosius here, and he has some troops with him, and their morale is +1, but that's due to his leadership bonus. So I don't think the standard actually has an effect. As you know, in Dominions 3, what the standard did was, what standard 10 means is that anybody within 10 squares of the commander or of the troop received a morale bonus. And I think in Dominions 4, it just means that anyone in the same squad. And since he's a commander, nobody can be in the same squad as him. So I don't think the standard works. I could be wrong, but either way, it doesn't get in the way of the fact that it's a cool looking unit. And that's one thing I want to state about this mod and what drew me to it and why I wanted to do it as my second mod showcase is that these sprites are beautiful. They are just amazingly beautiful. If in real life I was the emperor of a nation, I would want my troops to look like this. You know, these are the guys I would want marching under my banners. I mean, this is just amazing sprite work, and I don't know if Executor has other mods. I'll take a look, but a talent like his really shouldn't go to waste. Next, we have the Keeper of the Flame, who's an interesting priest / fire mage who has a chance, a pretty good chance, of death magic. The theme in this nation is that they are, well, there's, let me actually go into that. So this nation is this really high-minded nation of mighty heroes and angels, and they're the real good guys, right? But this alludes to an early age version of this nation that I don't think exists. And then what happens between the early age and the middle age is that they get beaten. Somebody kills them. And this nation now, the middle age Golden Tower version of Aurum, actually let's see if I can, no, that's not what I want. Okay, so the Golden Tower version is the rebuilding. You know, apparently they've sworn allegiance to an evil god. Well, it says a new god here, but in some of the flavor text it mentions the dark god that they're following. But they're building themselves up. So it alludes to a fact that in the early age they had a lot more power. Like their paragons, their main mages, were these great masters with amazing magical power, and now in this age they've been reduced. And with the one difference to this middle-aged nation is they have this thing now called the Undercity, which is full of skeletons and ghouls and other nastiness that the people living above are trying to fight against. There's also the Arkenstone Forge. So it's kind of like they're trying to get into this forge idea too, where they have these magical golden forges that they produce these amazing wonders. And then the Golden Tower is where the Paragons live. So these guys, the Keeper of the Flames, are kind of like the funeral guys, the mortuarists. I'm losing the word here, but you know, the guys that deal with the dead, and they burn the dead. They burn the dead, and my guess is because when people don't get burned, they turn into undead. So they have a little bit of skill with the dead and fire. Then, this is probably my favorite unit or commander of this nation. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because I'm a guy. But apparently, when anybody does a female sprite well, it's my favorite. And, like, for example, with Dark Ulm, Black Ulm, I liked the Leaderfrau. Well, the Grand Priestess, this is an amazing unit. And this unit is designed from the ground up, I think, to be the counterbalance to Urmor, Middle-Age Urmor, the Undead Nation. Because, first of all, it is a level 2 priest, so it can banish like no other. But it's also a level 2 nature mage, so it has a supply bonus. So if your troops are marching across ravaged terrain that Urmor has killed, and so there's no supply, well, hello, she produces it. She also recuperates. And finally, she can lead 40 troops and 10 magic beings. So this is an amazing unit. I mean, if you're fighting Urmor, you load this unit up with some troops, and they're self-sustaining. I mean, they could feed the troops, they could fight, they could banish undead, they could do it all. And to top it off, they're actually, in the early game, the best researcher this nation has for the cost. And the fact that they're not old, which we'll get to. So I just love it. And they look badass. They have a golden sword and a shield and like one of those Corinthian helmets. This is an awesome unit, and I've recruited a ton of them. They're my research base. And then we have the Grand Engineer. I don't know how I feel about this unit, honestly. It's old age, which, as you know from listening to me, if you have, I don't like old age units in general. I get what they're going for, kind of like the Ulm Engineer with the siege bonus and the defense bonus. And it's a decent researcher, but again, old age. And it's got 1 earth, 1 astral, which is good. I mean, those are good pads. But I read the flavor text, and I think, you know, instead they focus on defying the laws that govern the universe and using their magic and engineering skills to invent and construct remarkable things. Where's the forge bonus? If these guys are grand engineers who spend all their time creating all these amazing, wonderful things, I think they should have a forge bonus. I think that's what they're kind of their niche. And they don't. So they're just kind of old castle defenders, really. I mean, I just don't see a reason to recruit these guys, honestly. Maybe later in the game when you're trying to bring down castles and you can't afford a wall shaker. Then we have the Paragons. There are 2 versions of the Paragons. There's the Fighting Paragon and the Researching Magic Paragon. And this is the Fighting Paragon. Leadership of 85, morale bonus of 1, 90 magic beings, 1 fire, 1 earth. So really, these guys are actually good out of the box thugs as well. You can do a fire shield and iron skin and just launch these guys at the enemies, which is pretty cool too. Give them some good items. Like all cavalry, they don't have feat slots, but other than that, they're fine. And their scepter is a magical weapon. Their encumbrance is incredibly low too, due to the, well, they say lightless. I think what they just mean is weightless or light. And that's really also one of my minor criticisms about this mod, is that some of the text hasn't been gone over by a spell checker, or maybe the designer isn't a native English speaker, and that's totally fine. That's cool, but a couple misspellings, a couple words that are used in ways that maybe they shouldn't be. But I get the idea. This is supposed to be really light armor, and it's awesome. And the sprite, again, is just fantastic. Fire resistant. Oh yeah, these ladies, not fire resistant, which I learned the hard way because I used them to accompany some of my sacred units and bless them who generate fire, and I ended up setting my Grand Priestess on fire, which was quite hilarious, but certainly didn't lead to victory. Then we have the Paragon of Wisdom. This guy is a beast. He is a Adept Researcher plus 10, Fire Resistant, 25 Research, 2 Fire, 1 Astral guaranteed, and then 100% chance of another Fire, another Astral, 75% chance of another Astral. So you have a pretty good chance. I figured it out as a 3 in 8 chance of getting a 3 Astral one of these guys. Plus then you get a 50% chance of Earth or Death. So these guys are versatile and they're cool. And those are our commanders. The units, we have Aurumian Infantry. There's a version with a sword and a version with a flail, as you know, or Morningstar. As you know, Morningstars are +2 versus shield, so your choice is +2 versus shield, high damage, blunt, or slashing pierce, lower damage but higher defense. Then you have a Protector, which has a patrol bonus, and it tramples, so they go right along with the Legat. Then we have the High Guard, which look pretty much like late age man's defenders. In fact, that's probably the basis for the sprite, and they defend castles well, which I think every nation needs one of these guys. And just like the late age man unit, they have a crossbow and a sword, so you can use them as ranged troops, but also really tough and decent melee troops. I like these guys a lot. Didn't recruit many of them, honestly, but that's because I wasn't actually playing. I was just moving turns forward to research. So were I to actually be getting in fights, I probably would have recruited more of these guys. Then we have the Knight, a really solid high protection, high defense cavalry unit that is a formation fighter. Beautiful sprite as well. Then finally we have these two fellows. They are not sacred troops, but they are elite troops, I guess you'd say. There's the Arkenstone Keeper and the Arkenstone Guardian. They both are bodyguard units. It took me a while to figure out what the difference was, because I just assumed the Arkenstone Keeper here was just exactly the same as the other guy with the trident, except he had lower defense. But I finally figured it out. The glaive here has 2 attacks, so you get 2 attacks a turn with this guy. So he's obviously a much more offensively geared guy, and this guy with the trident is more defensively geared with the high defense. They both have a length 4, they both are wearing the same armor. This guy is a little bit more encumbrance, I think, at 10, and this guy, yeah, this guy's 8. So that's the big difference. This guy is a 2 attack, more offensively minded, and this guy is a 1 attack, more defensively minded. But they're both, again, super beautiful. Then we have the Sacred unit, the Firebeard. He has a heat aura, magical being, resistant to fire, and sacred. When they get damaged, I don't know if it's when they get damaged or when they get killed. I only saw it happen on the battlefield a couple times, but they change form and they turn into like a human torch kind of being. And they dual wield golden axes. They're very cool. So those are the recruitable troops. There's also a ton of summonable troops. In Conjuration, all down here at the bottom, you have a Firebird Spirit, which is very similar to the Summon Tupilak of late age Atlantis, where it's an assassination spell, a remote assassination spell that you send off, and one of the Firebirds, those sacred commanders, summon from another world and goes after a commander. I didn't get to that. Hard to show in an LP, but then there's Alteration. Now, well, actually, let's start with Enchantment, so I can kind of show you my thought process here. because you have crypt ghouls, which I will show you. One of the things I was going to criticize this nation for, and it's not anything at all specific to this nation, it's Dominions 4 in general does this a lot, and it bugs me, is that there's national summons for nations that nobody in that nation can summon. Bogarus is a good example of this. Late Age Ulm is a good example of this. You can't get your vampire counts. There's nobody in your nation that can summon your vampire counts. And that, it's common, and it bugs me. So I was about to criticize this nation for the same thing. The fact that nobody can summon your Crypt Keeper. And, but I've been proven wrong, and I'll show you why. There's Firebird Spirit. Okay, these look similar. One's Summon Firebird Spirit, one is Bind Firebird Spirit. The difference is one is a battlefield spell and one is a summon spell. Then there's the Crypt Keeper, the Timeless King, the Crypt Guardians, and Legion of the Undercity is just a shit ton of crypt ghouls, or the level 1 guys. The crypt, yeah. Then in construction, you have a Divine Sarcophagus, a Gold Dragon, and a Golden Idol. And in I don't think there's anything in Evocation or Thaumaturgy. At least nothing that I used. No. There is something in Evocation. There's Arkenstone Fires, which is a battlefield spell. I did not use that, but I'm sure it's similar to the, if you're watching my Pythium Byzantine, it's probably similar to the Alchemist's Fire. Just a cool ranged attack that's high power. So again, I was going to criticize this nation for not having the ability to summon their own units without a pretender designed for it, but I was wrong, and I apologize to Executor because he thought this one out beautifully, and I want to give him incredible kudos for this, because if you research all the way down to Alteration to this Arcane Knowledge spell, you summon a Paragon of Wisdom, which I understand to be a Paragon from the earlier age, back when the Paragons were really badass. And all this spell requires is 2 Astral and 2 Fire, which your recruitable mages can do. So I summon this guy, and then also if you all the way down here, you get a Emissary, which is the same sprite, I think, maybe a little bit different color. I didn't get to him; it takes forever, but I assume it's just the same thing as the Paragon Commander, except only even more badass. But so you get this guy. And here he is, Shy Cal. So we already looked at our normal Paragons, right? 3 Fire, 1 Earth, 1 Astral. You know, they're pretty decent. But this guy, 3 Fire, 3 Earth, 3 Astral, 2 Death, 3 Holy. These guys, well, actually 2 Earth. I made him some Earth boots, but this thing is a beast. Fire resistant, Adept Researcher plus 15. So that's what you get with that spell. So the goal is you want to research Alteration so that you can recruit these guys, which are just amazing, and then they come out of the box with the paths necessary to then summon, where are you, friend? These guys, the Crypt Keepers, who are level 1 Holy, level 1 Priest, level 1 Priest, they're sacred, and they're basically undead leaders. Oh, but they kill population. Ooh, that's not good. I only got one of them, and they instill unrest. But they're pretty badass undead leaders. Some of the other summons. We have the... well, looks like they forgot to name this, but it's the Divine Sarcophagus, which apparently uses the template of the Telesthetic Animate. And it's basically an immobile unit that is sacred and spreads dominion like a Telesthetic Animate, basically. So it's this nation's version of that. Difficult to kill, but you can't move around. Then you have this fellow here, the Timeless King. These guys are cool. Level 3, Holy, Sacred, they have Awe, and they fly. And they have a magical golden sword. So I could see these guys being your mid-game to late-game thugs, but they are incredible leaders as well. Plus 2 morale bonus, 120 units, 80 magical beings. These guys are very cool. Then there's the Golden Idol, which is another immobile creature, this time with Awe, a lot of Awe, and this one has, instead of the Priest power, this one has 2 Astral, and pretty decent research. So then, I think that's it for our summons. I'll show you the units. So, These guys are your general crypt ghouls, the level 1 death spell. I think they're no different statistically than regular ghouls. This is the Firebird Spirit, the Summon Firebird Spirit spell, which is basically our national sacred unit, except undead and with a Banefire shield. Oh, and they're ethereal. And 2 magic spectral axes. So these guys are actually pretty awesome, but unfortunately you only get 1 at a time with the spell. These guys are the Crypt Guardians. So they're the next level up of the undead summons. They're basically, I believe they're just skeletons. They have a Kopesh, which is really cool. And they are poor amphibians, so if you need to get underwater, these guys can get you there. And they get summoned in large numbers, which is great. And then finally we have the Golden Dragon in the construction field. And they are basically just this nation's version of the Iron Dragon, and they're pretty cool. They have Awe, they are amphibian, they have Golden Breath, which beam 2 squares at range 1. What does this mean? Acid damage. Awesome. So this is a late game just mega unit that you want to annihilate all your enemies with. So in general, I will say that I love this nation. I think they are so much fun. You definitely don't even want to attempt playing them without Production 3 scales. I picked Order 3. You may want to get away with 2, maybe 1. I mean, as you can see, I have a ton of gold. I don't know, though. I mean, again, I wasn't fighting any enemies. I was just kind of doing my thing. On a smaller map, or on a map when you have to fight a lot, and there's not a lot of breathing room, maybe that extra gold would be really helpful. I paid for it with heat and misfortune, since I wanted my pretender to be awake for her research. But I don't necessarily think this nation is worth a bless strategy, but if research isn't that big a deal for you, you might get away with having just really great scales and maybe having a dormant pretender. I wouldn't go imprisoned, because eventually you do want to summon some of these big guys, and either you want your pretender to be able to do that, or you want your pretender to help research like mine does. This nation probably does not need a super combatant pretender, because they're pretty strong, again, right out the box. The Grand Priestesses, again, are fantastic. They're my main researchers, although at the end I had so much money, I just started doing these guys every turn, since they had better research. However, they are old age, and I did lose a couple to disease. So, long story short, I highly recommend this nation. I think it's quite awesome, with just a little bit of polishing on some of the descriptions and some of the words, just to make sure that they make sense and are spelled correctly. This would be 10 out of 10, honestly. I mean, these are mod showcases, not mod reviews, so I shouldn't have said that. I'm never going to say any numbers again, but this mod is just right there. It's really a lot of fun. Plays, I guess, like Aurum, in the sense that it's heavily armored troops with a lot of production, but I don't necessarily think it plays like them in the sense that they have, well, 10 magic resistance. So they don't have low magic resistance. They have average magic resistance, so a bit more magically resistant version of Aurum. And so yes, that is Aurum by Executor, and the map, once again, is I don't know if it's Pangea or Panacea of Neohaven by Shimwooley. Thanks a lot, everyone.